machines. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, Hilchos Kalim, Prakim Vav, Zayin, and Ches. Before we begin, I would like to go back to the end of yesterday's shir when we were wondering the meaning in the Rambam's Halacha Yud Beis, right? We're talking about of Perek Chamishi. The Rambam spoke about a bench that has legs. If it's attached, it's considered a final keli, which was the topic of Perek Chamishi. If the legs are not attached, even though they are inserted easily, it's not considered a keli and it's not mekabel tuma. So I was learning the Rambam La'am, and I know that it's a doichik inside the words of the Rambam, but it's a hard Rambam to understand. I'm just going back to the end, mamash the end, Perek Chamishi, Halacha Yud Beis, all the way at the end. So the Rambam gave the klal that all benches, if when you take off the bench, the seat part, the legs go with it, then it's tamei, which means it's a keli. If when you pick up the seat part and the legs don't go along with it, then it's tar. When the Rambam writes, V'im hoyu kulam shel eitzoi etzem, he writes on the Rambam La'am, he was also stuck here. He writes, it's as if the Rambam is writing, that the legs, like the sitting part, is made out of wood or made out of bone. And as we're going to continue to learn that bone and wood kalim basically share the same rules. But in other words, if even only one of the legs are made out of stone, that classifies that bench as a stone keli. And the klal is, remember, that stone kalim are not susceptible to becoming tummy. So it's not that there were 3 stanzas, but it's azaba med. Okay, now my friends, we are starting today with Perek Vav. Perek Vav is now going to learn rules regarding a clay eitz. And like we just mentioned, wooden utensils and just bone utensils basically share the same rules. If it's already a keli, as we learned the concepts and the many details in the previous chapter, once something is classified as a keli, if it breaks, if its form is lost, there has to be a point where we say, or if it's the reason for which it was made can no longer be realized because of its brokenness. It's no longer a keli. And there is such a concept. And once a utensil that is tamei is no longer a keli because it broke to a certain point, then you know what we say? The tuma that was in there automatically goes away. Because it was, let's say, the cheer that became tamei. Now there's only a leg. The leg never became tamei. So that's basically going to be the topic of this chapter. Perek Shishi has 15 halachas, and whoever, everyone should really put our minds together. The concepts are very pashut. The applications and the details are complex, especially since many, not only in Perek Vav, but in all of the 3 chapters today, the Rambam is going to speak about many utensils that are not exactly the way in Tafshin Pei Gimel we have those utensils. You have to push and understand what is he talking about. Let's go. Halacha al kol kli shenitma, a keli that became tamei. However, after it's tamei, the nishbar achar shenitma, it broke. The Rambam uses 3 very important ways of defining breakage: broke, nishbar, and they complement each other. The nifsada tsurasai, that means its tsura, its form is nifsad, it's ruined, and vitashmishay, that means the tashmish of the keli, the purpose for which this keli was made, the usage of the keli is kaput. You have a bowl, you can't use the bowl anymore for whatever you made it for. And you should know that every word is meduyek. It's a breaking, losing its form. That's more about appearance. Losing tashmish is more content. Sometimes the appearance doesn't look perfect, but I can still use it. The Rambam writes all 3. Then tahar b'shirasi, the fact that it's broken automatically removes its tumah. This is not only so when kalim were tamei and now they broke, but if you had a keli that was susceptible to becoming tamei and it broke while they were still tahar. So let's go back to the previous chapter. If a keli is not yet a keli, it cannot even become tamei. Well, it used to be a keli, it's no longer a keli. So then shivireim einu mekabel tumah. That's the whole chapter. Now let's go bring it down to Olam Hazeh. Let's give examples for that. Halacha base. So when we're speaking about a wooden utensil or a bone utensil, how large To what extent must it be broken for us to apply the rule of halacha aleph? V'yetar. So like this, kol klei balabatim, not professionals, as we'll see soon. The logic between them making that distinction. Shiuram kiramayim. The shir is a pomegranate. What are we talking about? A pomegranate that Rambam speaks out clearly. Ketzad mishinakav akli. If the keli has a hole that's large enough. Not equal to a pomegranate, a little bit bigger. A little bit bigger means that if there would have been a pomegranate inside that bowl, it would fall out of the hole. Tahor. Now, shkoyach, you see, today we use greater precisions because we have instruments that everyone has. We have rulers. The pomegranate, there's different sizes pomegranate. So at least to narrow it down, an average size, not big and not small. Shkoyach, enjoy that. And another thing, how do you determine that? We allow, it doesn't have to be exact, and you will determine that. Another detail, there are times that if there would only be one pomegranate in the bowl, the hole, if you would push it out, it would squeeze through it, but it's not large enough for it to roll out by itself. So do we say, it's not considered broken yet? So the rule is like this, make believers or put 3 pomegranates in the bowl, which means 2 pomegranates will be leaning on this third one. If the weight of 2 is enough to push it out, that's called moitzidim. That's it. Okay, so far easy. Now, if the hole was perforated with a much smaller hole, only a olive can go out, and you fixed it. And then there was another hole, same size of a zayis usasamayim. Now, every hole was near the other. You never had a hole larger than that. But now, if you wouldn't have fixed it, or if you want to actually look at this keli and say, hold on, the old keli, there's a moitzidim and hole. You know why you don't see it? Because you fixed a little bit, you fixed a little bit, you fixed a little bit. So it says that even though it is sasum, it's patched up, but if you would have removed the patch, there would have been a hole big enough to let a pomegranate go out. So now when you look at the keli, is this the old keli or is this a new keli? We say it's a new keli. In other words, we put together all of the patches and we say, well, no, you had the old bowl. The old bowl is done. Now you have a patched bowl. It's a different keli and it's tahor. What happens if kelim from the outside had such large holes? What sort of kelim have these large holes? Certain types of baskets. In other words, they're not made to hold in it small things. Or rope net carrier borne by camels. We live at the Kaven. There we go. Guys, we had this a lot when we were learning about the dinim of kilei hakerem. So you have trellises which are normally placed in many places, but we learned in the context of a vineyard over which you would put the vines. So these have big, they're very holy, not halik, but falechet. You can't say moitzirimai. It's to begin with a keli made for a purpose, which I don't care if there are large openings in them. So then you go by the simple rule of the majority. If the majority of it is broken or torn. Now, let's go back to these trellises that we're speaking about the trellises that we just mentioned at the end of Halacha Gimel, that you had trellises and the majority of it was torn. And now, instead of you fixing it, what you did was you reinforced it by putting a pole on the top, by putting a pole on the bottom. So you reinforced it. It doesn't matter. The fact that it's still torn, it either, tahor means if it was tamei, it's tahor. If it was never tamei, it's not susceptible to becoming tamei, because you cannot call something a trellis if the majority of it is torn. Also, if you make a frame, we'll see the secret about the frame. Even though to begin with, the entire trellis was made with humongous holes through which a rimmon can go out of each one. But here, mitamol, the whole thing is mekabel tuma. Now, what's the thing with the frame? So I say, again, when you use the word frame today in Tafshan Pei Gimel, I don't know what you have in your mind. I'm thinking about the frame around the pictures of my home. The frames that we are talking about are frames. The frame itself has a base kibble. That's the word. The frame itself has a receptacle. See, Anything we learned, anything that has a clay kibble is susceptible to becoming tummy. Halacha hey, kol hakelim she'enim yechalim lekabel imoinim. Like, for example, small utensils, they can't have in it a rimoy, not because it's holy, not because it already has the lechalach. No, but because it's small, like a keli that's only large enough to hold a fourth of a kab, or an eighth of a kab, or vahakoinonim, wicker servers that are small. Any keli that's not even big enough for a moitzi rimoy, then we take a move down to the shear of a moitzi zayis. Now, nigma musif say borders of a keli that became torn, that became removed, that became ruined. Here again, im nishar bohen, if a little bit of the border is still there, not that's where we see that by the Rambam, the borders or the frames that they would make the kelim had receptacles in them. Then it still remains a keli that's shaykh to becoming tummy. Halacha 6. Hasalim shalpas, bread baskets. Pshiyurim tiki kare shalpas. We don't say moitzi rimain. Yaron, if you make a utensil specifically to hold bread, why would we say that only if a pomegranate goes out of it? No, there we say if it was made for bread, just for example, if the average size bread will go out of the break, will go out of the crack, will go out of the hole, then it becomes nullified. Whatever the average size bread is. Moitzi rimain is like, why everything the same moitzi rimain? And a chanami, if the keli was made stam to hold many things in it, then we go to the moitzi rimain. If it was made for bread, b'miyuchad, then it goes by that item. And that's the meaning in the halacha aleph when he said v'tashmishay. But you made it for a purpose. If you made it for a purpose and that purpose can no longer be realized or used with the keli, it's no longer a keli and therefore it loses its tumah. Halacha 7. Kupas haganonim, gardeners' bushels, are rendered tahar. If a bundle of vegetable can fit through it, same idea. You made this to hold bundles of vegetables. If it's going to fly out of it, it's not a keli. Now, Mishal Balabatim. Now, this is if you are a pro. But if you are Balabayas, b'moitzi teven. Watch out, b'moitzi teven. I want you to know that moitzi teven, a bundle of straw is larger than your bundle of yirakos. You see, when people are professionals, until today, you have kalim for your business. You're more professional. You're not going to use this for that. A balabais in our homes, yeah, even though that you bought it because you wanted to hold bundles of vegetables, if it breaks a little bit, it has a hole in it. So then you say, listen, I also every now and then gather straw. Balabatim, use. In your house, you'll use olive for another purpose. So therefore, only if it has a larger hole does it become tahar. The shel balonim, bathhouse attendants, right? They use these baskets, these for towels or for laundry. Then big gavava means that the hole has to be large enough for stubble to fall through. And why would they have stubble? Because he writes in footnote 3 over here, because that was what they needed to fuel up the bathhouse. And this is bigger than moitzi rimain. No, the concept is easy to chap. That, like, even though the balonim are professionals, you have a business, you have a bathhouse, and you bought baskets for one purpose. But if in your business, like by then, they also needed to constantly schlep straw mixed with this big gavava with stubble to fire up, to fuel up the wood, well, okay, so then it's still going to be used for a purpose. We know that, so therefore it doesn't lose its tumah. Halacha 8. Beis ka'aris, a chest which is made to hold bowls, she'ena makabel ka'aris. It cannot hold bowls because it broke to that point. Here again, since it can hold pots, which are much larger than bowls, and that's a switch over that halacha says, yeah, if you can't use it for this, you'll use it for that. If you have a chamber pot, and the chamber pot has a little crack, so people would urinate in it. You can't urinate in it, but people would go, they would defecate in it. Same idea. It's still makabel tumah. So far, so good, guys. Baruch Hashem. Halacha 9. The concepts are beautiful, meaning easier. The details sometimes. So if you have Kevin with you, and I don't know how he finds these pictures, whether they're accurate or not, it helps. You have to see what the Kevin. Halacha 9. Kol kli eitz shenechlek l'shnayim. So forget about a hole. It was split into two. Anything, if it's made out of wood, Split into two, boom, tar. Even though al dof even though the walls of each half can serve, because guys, when we're speaking about a keli, I don't like the picture here so much. We're speaking about a rounded keli. So when you have half of it, when you tilt it to the side, you have a certain pocket. Now I know there's no rims on it, but it uses a frying pan. Many pans they have were shaped that way. And even though it could be used like an ilfas, we don't say that. Chutz mikelim shel eitz. But if from the outset a keli was made out of wood, had in it two cups like the picture Kevin had before, even though they were connected, but if they break in half, they have double bowls, and then each one is considered a keli. Going, for example, this isn't the last one. You have a table that hakofel, a double table. That from the outset nasa shnei chalakim, and it's a type of double table that you can fold over and you can be nifty, you can extend. So now if it broke and you can't extend, the extension part of this table broke off. So what? Why should the table lose its definition as a keli? We could go in another example. If you have a tamko, you have a pot, hamiznoim, that has many compartments for different types of foods. That was like the picture Kevin put before. But in each part of it, you have a standalone compartment. Okay, going or another example, you have a double bench. And now that it broke, it can't be doubled, but you have a single bench. Why would that become tar? It was a bench, and it's still a bench. Now, basically, in holders in a wooden case. We're speaking about a keli that has in it many different receptacles for different jugs or smaller receptacles, and each one you can put another cup. When you pick it up, you're picking up all the cups together. It's not flat. It has many little receptacles. One of them were ruined. So indeed, that one that got ruined is start. And we don't consider it connected to the other ones. But the other ones are still a keli. Amazing. And if number two got ruined, again, if three get ruined, then the whole thing is started. It mashma, guys. That means that even though I have something that has in it 10 holders, in which I would put 10 jugs or 10 cups. So if one or two, that part is not tummy, but it doesn't take away the qualification of a keli to the remainder. But if three, the Rambam doesn't even write how big is it. It mashma, even if the big is humongous. If I can put 20 cups in there, if three like chazaka, the whole thing is ruined. If you have some sort of wicker crate, and these were used to pass fertilizer in fields, these are big utensils, and the inside of the keli yaron it's not your receptacle in which the deeper you go, the lower it gets. Adarab. The inside the utensil, the central point yaron is the highest, and it slopes down inside. Inside, and what happens is you really have four pockets in the corner. It's like four corners. A person would put fertilizer. These are big utensils, and an animal would drag it through a field. It would probably perforate it, and it would drop fertilizer. So, in other words, it's like something that has many receptacles in it. That's what we're talking about. The middle is tall, and the corners go down. And one of the corners got ruined. So what? Same concept. Still tummy. Here. Interesting picture. Then tohoiro. Now, unlike before, we went through number 3. Here, the Rambam is speaking about sides. One side you use if both sides get ruined, then it's not good. Hashulchan v'hadul v'kishin itchasu. When part of a table or part of a counter that people would use to put in it drinks got ruined, mekablan tuma achi chalik v'batal kol chaver v'imenu, until the part is completely separated one from the other, and that part that's separated, which is no longer functional at all, because that's the way of the world. You still use it. Nitla achas miragleim. Now, achas, this is very important. If you have something that's standing on 3 feet, you remove one of the feet, the whole thing is not a keli. Can't stand anymore. Of course, it's tohida, 2 feet. You know what the chiddush is on? If you remove all 3 legs, so now you have a new board. It's something else. If the person who owns it says, "Oh, thank God, now it lost one leg, I couldn't use it as a table. But now that all 3 legs broke, perfect. Now I got a tray." The guy, the owner, thinks I'm going to use it, whether he's going to use this table, whether he's going to use this counter, just like a person eats on a serving board, then your intention of using this makes it back into a keli. Now it's makabel tuma. Now let me explain what I mean. If it was tummy before, even when only one leg broke, it lost its tuma. When all three legs are broken and you intend to use this as a serving board, it doesn't go back to the old tuma. No, now it's designated as a new keli, and now it could be makabel tuma. If you didn't have that intention, then by default, it's still considered a broken utensil. That's not susceptible to tuma. Halacha yudal. Klei nesarim, a wicker utensil that the borders have fallen off. And these are wicker utensils without a border. It's just a matter of time for everything to be unwoven. But if there's even just the slightest bit of seal around their borders, they are still makabel tumah. Even though it's flimsy, even though it's going to be break tomorrow, no, it's still considered a keli. Halacha yudbeis. Tabla, a serving board, shemila eitzin, that you piled it up with wood. It's a serving board. A serving board needs to be flat. And then, for whatever reason, you attach this pile of wood on it. You know what you did? If I have a keli that's used by putting stuff on its flat surface, if I put wood, I pile wood on it, if I affix those woods, I can no longer use it as a flat board, as a serving tray. That's it. So I ruined its purpose by that. It was until now we were learning about a keli that was diminished. Now we're saying that sometimes adding is diminishing. But that's only because you piled the wood in a non-flat way. But if you covered it with boards, so you made it thicker, but you never removed its original purpose. It was a serving board, flat top. It's still flat top. Instead of it being 2 inches thick, now it's 5 inches thick. So then makabel is tuma, because you did not take away its original function. Halacha yud gimel, if a bench falls apart, it's starred. Now, if you tied it together with straps or with ropes, you don't say, well, come on, it's not nice, it's a patched up bench. No, if it's still functional, again, going back to the words on halacha aleph, you didn't lose the tashmish, then it's still tuma, mekabel tuma. But here again, if it was tame and it broke, it lost its tuma. When you fixed it with ropes, the old tuma doesn't come back over here. Certainly not midayraisa elama. Now it's considered a bench. Halacha 14. Hasalim shel gamalim, camel saddle baskets. Let's see if Kevin can find that. Hitiram, if they are released, they become pure. And as he writes here in footnote number 8, the saddle baskets carried by camel don't have a base. They were simply tied closed by the driver. And whenever you release the knots, you remove its receptacle. When you release the knots, then it's just a cloth. That's why it's tohayro chazar kshadam. But when you retie the knots, the kabel and tuma. So the Rambam wants to make a point that nimtzu mistamin umistaden afilu esu pamayim bayim. These are, if we're going to say that, that when it's knotted in the bottom, so now it has a receptacle to receive stuff to be transported on your camel. When you open it up, it can't receive it, it's starred. That means potentially, even though lechatchila it's made that way, every time you untie it, every time you tie it, it's makabel tum. And the final,
but it doesn't go back.
It doesn't go back. We're gonna, I just want to say that I don't remember from the Rambam. I do remember from the Gemara that, if I'm not mistaken, that even after you break a keli and put it back together, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes you have to wait until the end of the day. Remember that chazal that they were afraid. We're going to have it for sure in the Rambam if what I'm saying now is correct, and if not, it's not going to be written at least al halacha. That when you take something to the mikvah, you have to wait until head of shemesh for truma. So if you're going to be able to break it and fix it, which by din Torah, you took away the truma and you can use it right away, they were afraid that you're going to think that just like breaking it, taking it to the mikvah, I think they made some sort of takana about the original truma coming back. But anyway, not yet. We're not there yet. Now the final halacha in this chapter, halacha tesvav, hashulchan, a table or a dupiki, some sort of countertop, shechipan b'shaish, that was covered with marble. The shear, and we learned yesterday that the Rambam holds that any tzipui keli, like the tzipui, is not makabel tuma. The keli became bottled to the tzipui, but here you didn't fully cover it. You allowed makim hanachas hakoises, like cup holders. So you, in other words, there are holes in the marble cover. The beauty here is a beauty in the negative is that you allowed for some of the original tabletop to be used as a tabletop, and there when you put the cup in it, it's not on the marble. The marble is around it. It's not on it. So then it's still tameo. But the im chipa hakoil. But if you fully covered it, so then tar again. That's the Rambam's hold, right? You're mevatel the keli when you cover it. Number one, and number two, that the covering itself is not like abultum. Bein b'tzipui oimed for sure. If the coating, if the covering is something that's going to last, even b'tzipui she'ena oimed, doesn't matter. Right now, it's a covered keli. Bein shechipa es leviz bizav, whether you covered its frame or whether you didn't cover its frame, that's insignificant. You covered the entire keli. Bein shoya eitzim chashuvim. Whether the original wood was chashuv, now we see boxwood is chashuv. The rule is, guys, we learned to see, yes, we learned to some Pedic Dalet, right? Hoil, the chipra kulam, once it's fully coated or fully covered, then the Rambam holds the whole keli is tohidim. If it was tamei, it's tohidim. And also, it's no longer a keli that's susceptible to becoming tamei.
Why up on top when we add wood on top of the thing?
So Aaron is pointing out that what shata covering, see, very good. If I have a wooden tabletop and I added wood, so wooden tabletop. Masha Enken, if you're having two different materials, see when you add the same material, you are extending, you're just making the original thing taller, thicker, fatter. When you're putting a different material, that's how you define the chipui yatzipui. Okay, Pedic, Zion. Now we're going to focus on leather utensils. Now it's beautiful, guys. The seder is so geschmack. So really, if we put together Pedic Vav and Pedic Hey, Rabbi Chaim, we learned two things. We learned when is the keli a finished product, because when you're making it, even though you can argue, I can already use it, but in many times you say, remember the beginning, that no. People normally they would smear the fish skin to make it polished. Before you did that, it's not makabel tuma. And then we learned in today's chapter, Pedic Vav, the first chapter, okay, now that you have a finished keli, if it breaks, at a certain point, it's no longer a keli. We're going to learn both parts. In other words, the mitzias and the bittul b'mitzias. When is it a mitzias, and when are you mevatel it regarding a clay ord and the gabaldik? Okay, that will be the topic of Pedic Zayin. Pedic Zayin has 15 halachas, and again, the ideas are the das tachton, very easy to chap. And again, some kelim, if people get stuck here, it's not because you're not understanding the concept. The concept is easy. You're not chapping the mitzias. Halacha al. Clay oil. Now we're going on clay oil, on leather. The aim is when is it considered the finished product? So you have to go into details. Ha turmal, a shepherd, satchel, the chayoytze boy. Only mishiyachsam sivsaysav. Only when the edges are folded over and sealed closed. And after you seal it closed, you trim the tiny pieces that project beyond the leather, and you make straps, because without all of these steps happening, if you see a picture of a satchel, then you can't use it for a satchel. No, it's made for a tashmish. Only after all of this can it serve its tashmish. So kurtia, a leather mat, the borders have to be trimmed, and it's tzitzisa. I want you to know that they used to put some sort of metal rim. It was a tashel mateches that was made somewhere in it or on top of it or around it for its beauty. That's the tzitzis. There was some sort of metal fringe, and that was the standard. And if everyone has that as a standard, even though it's functional, but that's not the way it was made. Kat bulia, a leather bedsheet, when the borders are sealed and trimmed. Leather pillows or leather cushions, when the borders are sealed, and the strands that come out of it are trimmed. Now, tefillin, it's amazing. Even though you can only wear tefillin when you have retzuas, how would you put your tefillah on you without retzuas? Nevertheless, the moment the tzitza itself, the moment the cube itself is finished, even though you still have to put the retzuas in it, it's great. See, this we can appreciate. You get the two sides over here. Psak is, no, it's still considered, even without the retzuas, as a kelim. And make no mistake, guys, That's a great example of kli oid. You think about it. What's holier than tefillin? Nothing. Nevertheless, a tefillin can become tamei. From when? From the moment the cube is ready. Right, the leather base of a cradle, which you still have to make the loops. The loops, Rabbi Chaim, is that which you attach to the legs of the cradle. It means without the loops, you can't even attach it. So, indeed, no one puts the baby, you put it inside the frame, and if you can't even attach it to the frame, it's not considered a cave. A sandal, right, is something that doesn't cover your entire foot. When the leather will be bent over. When it comes to a shoe, here, when it's placed on its mold. If you have shoes, but you still plan to paint it, they used to color it yellow, or they would have other designs made on it. So you don't say by shoes, since it's functional even without the designs. We don't say that. If you intend to paint the Nike Mishugas on it, until when you do that, it's not a shoe. Halacha beis. You can say pshita. No, the Rambam is coming to a chiddush. People would put on their hands some sort of leather covering, right? Don't think about a glove, guys. A glove has a tzuras keli. We're giving you you would take pashat, a piece of leather, and you would wrap it around your hand in order for you not to get pricked by a thorn. Why? Because I know that you are using it for a function. That's the pshat. It doesn't have a tzuras keli. That people would lose that you would collect on it, the manure of your cattle, or a piece of leather that you would use to tie the mouth of the animal closed. A hide that's used to chase away bees when you're gathering honey, or any type of piece of hide that you're using as a fan, because it's hot. Even though you are using it for a tashmish, since you did not make it into any specific form, you look at it, that's the meaning of it has no tzuras keli. Therefore, it's not a keli. They would have finger coverings. Now, was it sewn together or not? I don't know. Not a glove for the whole hand. They would have things that they would put on the tips of their fingers. That's not, and they would make it out of leather. It's not yet called something that has a tzuras keli to haidos. Other chutz mi shel kayotzin. All right. Why is that? Because the people that would harvest those fruits, the fruit,
berries,
they would sometimes use it not to cover their fingers, but they would actually use it to put certain types of little berries in it. So that then you can say, no, that's something with a clay kibble. So in other words, if it has a real clay kibble that's made to be used not only to cover your fingers, I don't know why that doesn't count, but that doesn't count, then it's already considered a keli. Nikra. So in the last chapter we learned about Moitzi Rima, and here we're speaking about little pieces of hide. You understand? So the rule is in Eina Mekabelas Asrei for Oig, not torn in the majority. Anushir. Why? What makes it into a keli? Because those berries, those oigalach were put in it. If it can't even hold the roiv of one oig, is garnished. Leather belts and pieces of leather that people that Nebuch lost a foot, they put it on their stumps. You understand? It's a protection. Today we have all these fake legs. Then they didn't have that. We're not even speaking about a person with a wooden leg. They would have fake wooden legs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a person that put it on the stump. So when he's going to crawl on the ground is not going to be rubbing. It's like a shoe.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that already has a tzuras keli. The leather rings that they placed on their arms to hold up their garments. They like be a big dame. They are mistamin. And this is very important because what the Rambam is saying is, let's go back. Remember the wood By wood, we made a chilik between whether it has a base kibble, whether it is pshutin. By metal, we didn't. Oil, we learned, is like eights. We have to remember these rules, which means that even though pshute klei oil are not mistamin midivrei Torah, they are mistamin midivrei soifrim. So this will be considered a klei oil. That's makabel tuma midivrei soifrim. Halacha, hey, oil shotoifrim memenu kisuli yavul Israel shel zoidei ginois. People that winnow grain heaps. So they have these pieces of leather that cover their hands and their arms. It's like what we call today long gloves. You see people that have gloves all the way up to the elbows. In other words, the moment it's fitted for a person's hand is considered a beged. Okay, and the Rambam is coming to a big chiddush. What's the chiddush? These are things that are not, they didn't look like a proper glove. That would be a beged. They were very primitive. But once it has some sort of form, then the next thing that we're learning right now is that if it's made to protect the person, it's considered a keli. Something that's made only to protect another keli won't be considered a keli. If these types of primitive gloves that cover the hands of painters or blacksmiths, as we'll see in a moment, it's not makabel tuma, because as we'll see, it's not to protect your hand. You know what? It's to protect the painting. It's to protect the painting. It's the other way around. It's to protect the keli. And zaklau, or in other words, it's fitted enough. It's not perfectly fitted, but it's there to serve the person, either to prevent you from getting hurt or to enable you to do your work better, right? Work out gloves, lechalach. That's a keli, makabel tuma. But if it's made because since when I work, I sweat, and I don't want my sweat to ruin the thing that I'm working with. In other words, it's made to protect the item. Now that we established up until in the first 5 halachas, that which renders a klei into a keli, now we're going to go into the bittul b'mesias. Now we're going to go into what we learned in today's first part, Pedig Vav, which is if something is already considered a keli, klei, how much of it has to get ruined for you to say, it's no longer a keli. The halacha of kama shir haneked sheyinokev klei v'yita doesn't work with the moitze rimoin or with the moitze zayis. It's whole different rules. It's like this. Ha chemes, a keli made out of leather for that's made for carrying food. Mishtenark v'kamoitzi pakois shel shasi. Balls of warp, guys, shasi, the warp are the threads that go in the length. Just you don't know, and those strands are skinnier than the eidev. Now the im eine yechayla lekabel shal shasi, because from the beginning lechayla, it had already holes in it. So you can't say it's already like the trellises we learned. You can't give them moitzirimon, right? Like in last chapter. So if it's a keli because it can hold, let's say, spools of thread that are thicker. But now we don't say the shear of if it's big enough for a ball of shasi to go out. We don't say now if it's big enough for the 8, we don't do that. Now we go back to the majority. Okay, it means we're speaking about a holy vessel to begin with. Here, it's just consistent to what we learned in the previous chapter. Halacha Zayin, haturmal, a leather satchel. You should know these are worn by shepherds, really smiling, and they have in it many, many little pockets. And one of those inner little pockets was ripped. The shepherd would still use the bigger satchel, so he lost one sub compartment. So what? Very much aligned to the opening of Pedig Vav, that the Tashmish was not lost. However, the Eine Chiberloi means that if Tuma touched that torn part, that's not Makabel Tuma. Because that's torn, and it doesn't render the whole Keli torn. Because if you have a sub-compartment in a compartment, even though the breakage of the sub-compartment doesn't take away the status of the whole Keli as being, it's still a Keli, that part is nothing. have a drinking pouch.
Yes.
Halacha ches. Now listen to this. That's a very bad. That's not the picture we're talking about, Kevin. We're speaking about a drinking pouch that was made from the hide of the animal near its testicles, near its beitzim, and they used to use those beitzim also as another subcompartments. So hachemish beitzim shalom mekabel, and now those beitzalach are not. That part cannot be serviced anymore to holding water. So again, those kissim, Danny, the tohoidus goes on the kissim. I want to go back, but the rest of the chemis is still makabel tuma. It's mamish like halachas. I know if I had a keli and I had a subcompartment, when the subcompartment gets ruined, it's separated enough for you to say that is not a keli, but the whole thing still has its function, which will mean if tuma touches that, nothing is tummy. If tuma touches the main part of the drinking pouch, then it is tummy. Halacha 9. Klei oil. Kelim that have loops or that have straps, like a sandal that's worn on flat land, or vekis shel shenotzis, a pouch that's tied closed with a shenotzis, with a strand. And guys, don't forget we learned in the previous chapter, remember about those bags, those saddle bags of camels. There are times that you say that when it's untied, it's nothing with nothing. This type of keli, even when it is mutarin, it's still considered a keli. Why? Oh, so the Rambam gives the reason. Because since even a commoner, anything that can easily be retied is considered a keli even when it is untied. But now if it became tamei, and not you untied it, guys. You removed it. Then then tohidem. In other words, this word that I headed yachol b'mehedol lahachnes, we don't extend it to oilam but. In other words, if the straps are in it, then all you need to do is just bind it. Then it's still considered a keli. Once you remove the straps, even though you can put it in also by your head, it's not a keli. Bite it. Allah chayut. Kis shel shenatzois, if shenitlu shenatzo. So let's go. You have a pouch that's closed by its strands, and all of the strands were removed. So he says, "Adainu makabel tuma." Why? Because that kiss is a kiss even without this. It's formed like a clay kibble, unlike the sandal. But if you take the kiss itself and you stretch it out, that means you ruined its receptacle right now. Now it's tahar. Again, even though you can easily put back the strands and reuse it. Tala alav es hamatlis milmatam. If you attach a hook from which it could be hung, milmatam mekabalas tumam, even though you completely undid it, because any leather that has a hook attached to it is called something that has a tzura scale. And let me just add something. If it doesn't have a base kibble, okay, to save it. So we learned already that a clay oil is only Tami Midrabanan, so it's Tami Midrabanan. The point is that it has a tzura scale because of the hook. Halacha yudal. Oil shekarach bo esa kameya. Leather that you use to wrap around a kameya, an amulet, is makabel tuma. That's Danny. That's only when it is wrapped in a wrapped position. Pshata itar. Now it's not pshute kliyet. It's not pshute kliyet. It's not a keli. It's just a piece of hide. You get it? Good. Chazar karach boy. Then a makabel tuma. And like we learned by many things in the previous chapter, which means and then umistame umistar afilo eser pamim bayoim, and 10 doesn't mean 10. 10 means 1,000. Yeah. Halacha by.
It doesn't seem like you have to wait till the day for this. It seems like you open it up, you're good.
I know that. Okay, so whatever I mentioned. Okay, let's wait for that. Right. Halacha. We are in the middle of Yidal. It's geschmack. Again, just the applications. You have to have a good imagination. What about the hide upon which you write the kameya? This is amazing. Nothing taught. Just because you wrote on a piece of hide a couple of shemois doesn't make it into a keli. Now, if you would make it, but if you cut a piece of a piece of hide and you made it into a ring, and I want you to know, guys, just a klal. that anything whose tashmish is tachshit, there's very little criteriums that it needs other than it's a tachshit. If it's a tachshit, it's makabel tum. When it comes to kelim, it has to have a certain base kibble or not base kibble, like we go into that. I'm just bringing this up because I'm still struggling with what we learned yesterday with that chesemis ring. Remember, the ring was made out of metal and the seal was made out of the almoig. And when we said it's tamei, I said then the ring is tamei because it's a tachshit. Just the other way around was hartachab. Just anything that has a din of a tachshit. Now, could be those signet rings don't have a din of a tachshit. You have to know how do you classify it. But remember this rule, guys. A tachshit is very susceptible to tumah. Halacha yud beis. This is going to be an amazing halacha. And by the way, halacha lamaisa, aside of tumah and tara, there's something that we learn for our tefillin from this halacha yud beis. Let me just say it by heart. Of course, the mitzvah min amufchar by tefillin is that the tefillin, to begin with, should be made out of one piece of hide. And as time progressed and God gave into the world, God was megala more chachma, and to be used firstly for the mitzvahs. You should know that the types of tzitzoits, of boxes that we have for our tefillin are muhudah like no one ever had since God gave the Torah, which is beautiful. Alpi ikir hadin, the 4 compartments into which you put a separate parshiyos and tefillin shel rosh could be made by different pieces of hide. And the raya will be from this. They use this Rambam as one of the proofs, even though it's not a muhudah. Hatfila shel rosh are considered arba kelim. And therefore, you're going to think,
even if it was one piece?
Even though it's connected in the bottom. No, it's 4. No, the Rambam is speaking about a tefillin that the compartments were separated and they were sewn in the bottom. So it's not considered one kelim. Now we're getting to something. Don't think it's lakula. It's not lakula. When they're sewn together, the Rambam is not saying that if the source of tumah touches one side of the box, like the other side is started. No. But we'll see what we're getting to. It's considered 4 kelim l'chumra. Harei, now, shenitmas b'meis, just an example. And I want to just quickly remind everyone, not so pasha this, because the din of the halal cherev that we know, at least I feel like we learned this properly over here, thank God, that halal cherev means, no, if it touched the mace, it won't become, it's still going to impart tumah on the level of an aviyah voice. That means a keli touched the mace, and then that keli that touched the keli. So now it
person?
Huh? No. Person keli person. Remember, anyways. It came bitumas mace. V'hiter ketzitza reshayna. Now, what are we learning? We're learning what the whole thing today. Then it was perik vav, some perik zayin. If you undo a keli, you make it ois keli. The whole thing is nullified. You know what, my friends? If I would view the tefillin shorosh as one entity, the tefillin shorosh has no value if it has 3 compartments. God said to put 4 parshiyos. You don't get a half a mitzvah. It's nothing. Then you would say, if you took out one compartment, then everything becomes tar. You can't say it here. That's the meaning. That piece that you broke off is tar, but that which remained is still tummy. That's the pshat here. And I'll tell you more than that. And then vitikna means not you put that original piece back, chavra. It means you put back a new piece. That's all because we viewed the tefillah shorosh into 4 kelim. So I'm going to argue the other 3 compartments were never broken; they were there. Not only that, the new piece also becomes tummy. With that, it's part. You are mechaber to the first keli. Even if you did it now to another part. But I know that the way we have the version in the Rambam, there's no but that's the way we're going to read it. So even if you took out the first 3 one at a time and you replace them, the original tumah is still there. But now, if now you undid the 4th and you replace the 4th, don't think you're good to go, but you lowered the level of tumah. It used to be an av. This new keli is takanu now. Finally, now it's a new keli. But this new keli halachically touched the old keli, even though it's the same keli. So an av can make a keli into a rishon. Nasa skula rishon l'tumah. Sharei hitel kol achas ve'achas v'chazer v'tiknum kulam. So, and it's only after he did the 4th that at least there, since the keilus u'tzilan achroinos shenaga b're'inot, it's like a panam chadashos, but this panam chadashos touched halachically the original one. So now it's a rishon, which is a big advantage, at least now, because if you remember, a keli that's a rishon cannot render a keli into a shem. Not even midrabanan. A keli that's an av can make other kelim into a rishon. Now do the whole thing again. But now the whole ketzitza or the tefillah in the singular, we call it tefillin, now it's a rishon. Now the whole thing again. You removed one box, and then you put a no. Still a rishon, like we had before. But a nakuda here is still a rishon. Now so now you fixed it. Now it's time because now it's a new keli. And did it touch the old one? Yes, it did. But that's the rules that we learned in the previous segment of Sha'ar Satuma. That addition cannot make a sheni by Kalim. She'ein Arishain, but Tama Kalim Peshu Vlad, as we learned.
But he could have just taken out all four and put four in.
Huh?
Could have taken out all four at the same time.
He could have taken. Yeah. In other words, if he took off all the four, then it's completely taught. It won't even be. Here, the reason why because since that's the key. Since we're viewing the four compartments into four separate kalim, if I took off one at a time, even though it's not kosher tefillin, it's still a kalim. If I took off all four, then there's no kalim. Now, sandal, a similar because tefillin is a holy article. We're speaking about a sandal would have two flaps, two wings. Same thing, if you remove both of the wings, it's nothing, it's garnished. So, wow, it's enough. We're trying to get to that. We're beginning with the Tuma Hamura of an Av because we want to find a scenario where even though it's going to be a Panam Chadashis, and it's the same, but it's halachically a new one that touched the old one, and Av can make a rishon. How can a Keli become an Av? A Zav stood in it. That's it. It's a Midras Lezav. One of the wings got torn off, one of the pegs, one of the projections, and you fixed it. So it's still considered part of the old keli, like by the tefillin. You know, if you're only one side, because every side, it's viewed like two keli. You can't say that when you broke off one wing, even though you can't use it, it's nothing. It's not nothing yet. So the tumor remains. When you fixed it, it's part of the old Tomei Dika keli. Nifska shniyan, if then the other side broke off a tikna, like we had by the tefillin. It never lost Tairas Keli, but now that both of the straps, both of the wings, both of those naim are new, so it's like a new Keli that touched the old Keli. So now you downgraded it from Midras, both as naim chadashis, but it's like a Keli that touched the Midras. Beautiful. But what happens if both osnaim were taken off at the same time, or not at the same time? One ear was taken off prior to you fixing it, the other one fell off. Or some other breakage of the sandal happened, which completely is mabatal. It's Tairas Keli, like if the heel part was torn off, or if the nitel chatmai, the nose of a shoe, is where you put your big toe. Something in the front got ruined, or if it was broken into two, now it's completely torn.
Here, everything's tar. It's tefillin. Just to clarify.
No, by tefillin, like you. No, if I care, that Rambam is writing out what you spoke out by heart. That if all of the four compartments break off, it's completely taut.
But each compartment would still be taut.
No.
Individually, and it's off.
I don't think so.
Because it's Caleb.
No. But I think since it was made to hold tefillin and it's not good, like I don't think so. And you know what? Could be it is, and that's why the Rambam Amtaka writes that when it says v'tikna, you put a new piece. You're right. I think Rabbi Chaim is right. That well, by the compartment, since it's a base kibble by itself and it's a keli by itself, that part remains tummy. The Rambam doesn't address it. Could be. Okay, let's go back. Halach Yud Gimel. The one thing is clear. The oznav not, because the oznav is a flat piece of leather. There's no base kibble in it. Okay. Halach Yud Gimel. Minal shenifchas. A shoe that was damaged. A shoe means not a sandal. A shoe is something that covers the entirety of your foot. It goes by that. And if your big toe sticks out for stays, it's still a shoe. If you have a hole in your sole, it's still considered a shoe, even though it gets wet when you walk in the snow. Halach Yudal. Tefillah shenit meis. Tefillah is the lashon yachar of tefillin. Yeah, Baruchnis, we can have a Tamei Dikadaven. That's not what the Rambam is talking about. We're talking about a tefillin that became Tamei. So me'emes sai taharasam. So Shel Yad, how much of it do you have to take apart? So let me just use the words. There's the titura that we call, which is the bottom base. You have to separate the ketzitza from the titura. Completely no, but three sides. Today, everything is made out of the same wheat, the tefillin that we use. We're not talking about, we're talking about it was different parts that were sewn together. You have to undo it. Now, Sholroish, that's not enough. Sholroish, not only do you have to separate the box from the titura misholosh ruchais, but every compartment that we're calling a ketzitza was sewn to the neighboring one. Again, that's what I mentioned before, that film that Rambam was talking about, it's made out of different parts. They have to be disconnected. If not, clearly that answers Rabbi Chaim's word. Clear. In other words, no, maybe fakert. I'm still not clear. In other words, the question that we're asking is if you take off one ketzitza, does it retain the tumah?
From the tefillin.
Maybe it does. The Rambam says because once you're yater, if the ketzitza, if the box is away from the titura, even only from shalosh, and you separated one from the other, the tefillin is taught. The question is maybe the piece remains tummy. I don't think so. Okay, I don't know. Halacha tezvav, the final halacha. Hakadur. They used to have leather balls, not the way we have balls with air. Our good Brazilian soccer ball. Nah, the old balls. It was one piece of leather. They ho'imom and any type of mold. Okay. We just learned about you put a shoe, you put the leather on it to make a shoe. V'hakameya, an amulet, v'atfilin, shenikru achar shenitmu. Hanageya bahem tamei, u'bamasha betoichan tahar. Wow. Hanageya bahem, still a tamei. Why are you tamei? Okay, that's good. Rabbi Chaim, that's the halacha that you were talking about. So he's saying, the way he's understanding it here in the Chayenu footnote is that the part of that keli, so if it was an av, is a rishon. Not an av, but a rishon. It's like a new keli that had contact with its original keli. That's what I think he's saying. And therefore, that's the word. That which is in it, so addition cannot be matama further. That's this halacha.
You touch that, you don't become a sheni.
Or for sure not. No, first of all, the Rabbanan, I do become a sheni, but Kalim don't become a sheni. What's a part of it doesn't become tar, because it has a base cable. It doesn't retain the original tumah. It's as if something touched the original one. That's what he's saying. And that's why you become tummy. If you touch that which is in it is completely taught. And therefore you won't become tummy. For ikuf shenikra, saddle that is torn, and again, even if you touch that which is inside of it, tummy. Why is that? Because the way they would sew saddles is they would sew it through and through. It's amazing. So if you touch Masha B'toichai, if Masha B'toichai was sewed together with the saddle somehow, It's all about it going down a level of tumah. It's going down a level of tumah. That if the original had a tumah, let's say midras, and then which is an av, and if we consider a part that was torn still an av, then that which is in it is a rishon. And if we consider the torn part a rishon, that which is in it are completely taught. Okay, that's the way we learn pshat, and I think we're learning pshat correctly. And if not, then please correct me. Okay, Chavra, moving on to today's third chapter. Peirik Shmini. Now we're moving on to metal kalim. So we began today. Peirik Vav was still clay 8, focused primarily on clay 8s and clay 8s. Huh? Yes, I did. Yeah. Now, metal kalim. There's going to be different rules to the point that Rambam is going to point out the paradox that certain dinim for which we say a clay 8 is tahar, there the clay matechas will be tamei. And certain things that are metame klei mateches, it's not that klei mateches will be more chamer. Certain halachas, it's going to be the opposite rules. And as the Rambam is going to point it out, and a big part of this chapter will be, and we already touched upon it, but we're going to focus it is that when you own something, and something is not yet bigamar malachton, but you decided only by machshava to use it as it is, so it's called that machshava is enough to be yoyred the keli l'tumasim. You own it, you designated it, you're going to use it the way it is. Right? We learned this in them together. Like if you have a piece of leather, it's good enough for it to be used as a mat, l'mashal, but you were planning to make it into a shoe. Then you said, no, I'll leave it the way it is. Boom, now it's makabel tuma. It's already considered a mat. Once something was designated as a keli, and you want to change its designation, fakert. Now you want to change its designation, and that change will make it no longer susceptible. Machshava won't be enough. You're going to have a mice. Machshava is enough to bring something into Tumah. Machshava won't be enough to take something out of its Tumah. For that, you're going to have mice. That will be a big cloud that we're going to learn in Perek Shmini. Perek Shmini, again, has 15 halachas. Hashem self will finish it properly. Halacha out. Kol klei mateches or matchos. Any metal utensil, like we learned by klei oid, like we learned by klei eitz and klei etzem. Rule: it has to be a ready product. If you remember the very tragic machloikas between Rabbi Zajac and Reish Lakish that ultimately led to their passings away was about the knife. When is it called Gemar Malachtim? And Reish Lakish that used to be a bandit.
He said that's how you know about the knives.
And Rabbi Zajac said, I'll agree to you because there was a bandit. And that was a very tragic. However you understand that Gemara, it's a very sad story. But that's the question. So, now, I want to give if you remember, we touched, it was yesterday or 2 days ago, the days are merging one into the other, Baruch Hashem, in a good way, is that golme clay eights can be makabel tumah. Because many people use the clay eights in a more goylem dika state. We don't say that by metal. Avol golme clay matchois, the Rambam will explain what that means. I'll give applications. Never ain't a makabel tuma. Was is pshat a goylem clay mateches halacha beis ve'elohim golem clay matches kol she'asen lashuv oisai any utensil that is still going to be smooth with the file or l'shabetz it has to have its surface leveled or you have to straighten out uneven points or cave or you plan to polish it. It still needs some pounding, right? The makam patish, you have the makam, it still needs that again, even though it can be functional now. Or if it's only lacking a handle, that means you can say, come on, the pot is functional. Yeah, you're going to add handles. Look, if you plan to add handles, it's called a goyel. Or a rim, and whatever however you plan to have this at the end, it has to be something that you don't have to do any other action to make it usable. Ketzad Hasayif, that's the sword. That was they were speaking about. Until it was smooth. Hasakin, when is it ready? Until it's sharpened. Mamash today. I have a knife. Now, by the way, once the keli is a keli, we're not going to say, since I'm planning to resharpen it, we don't say it's not tummy. But when you're going from a non-keli to a keli, you're making a knife, it has to be sharp, the way you would use it. If you're making kelim from a block of iron, or a bar of metal, or from the face of a wheel, and from plates and from coverings of utensils, from the bases of utensils, from the rims of utensils, from the handles of kelim, from metal scrap, or from pieces of cut away from utensils. Because my place you call Elu Shinasu is Golme Klemat Choisheim. In other words, if the source metal, he's writing here very good on the footnote, is coarse and rough, and therefore people would always smooth it out before they're being used, right? So you can't consider the keli functional until you smooth it out. Masha Enkein, like I just give the mashal of a knife that was a knife and now it's dull, you can't say it loses its type. If something, if you already had a kelim, it already had a kelim, and it broke, and now you're fixing it. Or it didn't break, it just got worn out. Again, my example, I think the mother spoke a knife that is not sharp. Or from different nails. In other words, you made a new keli, but you're making it out of something that was already b'toidas keli. That's a big thing. Once you're making something from a keli that at one point was a keli shenigna malachtan. First of all, it doesn't lose its toidas keli if it's now unpolished, and even if you're making a new keli out of it. So you had a knife and you're making it into a nail, gavaldik. Since it came from a keli, even though while you were making it, there was a moment that it wasn't a keli at all. It's choizer l'toidas keli very easy. A yid can do tshuva very quickly because we used to be pure. So make notes. If you were never a keli, then it has to be the standard of it becoming a keli. It's much higher. If it is a keli, either if it got dulled or even if you're making this into that bigger chiddush, it's easier for it to make it. You don't need the polishing. Now the logic is there because the metal was already polished once. It's not as coarse as. That's the way he's hyching here in the bottom. If you don't know where the raw material of these nails came from, if it came from a block, then it has to be a higher standard. If it came from old ones, even less is good enough. We're going to be lenient. Until you smooth it, it's functional. But if you make it out of a goylem, it has to be smooth. Then we'll be lenient. So before we spoke about a rim, a handle, guys, a rim and a handle is more essential than a covering. Because the rim and the handle are connected too. Makes a lot of sense. Coverings are not connected. So if I have a keli that's fully smooth and finished, and I plan to make a kisui, I would even argue, even if the kisui is going to be attached to it. Even there, we don't say that, until you have the covering, it's not a keli. That we don't say. Because unlike the rim, unlike the handle, so a needle. Now, guys, you have a needle with the pointing edge. You have a needle that's with a hole-lead edge to which you put the thread. And people used to use needles to take out a splinter. There's a function to a needle. So if you had a needle, you didn't make the hole on the other side, but you did polish it. You were making it just to have a point, a pin. That's called a keli. Because it has a function. If you are making it for a sewing needle, even though it's polished, it doesn't have the hole. It cannot function yet. So then it will be called a gol meklei matchis. Now, and in contrast, a goylem klietz is tamein, right? Number one, look at the irony. So people say, klietz is more chamor. It's not true. But we also learned pshute klei matchis midoiraisa is tamein. Pshute klietz at least midin toira is toirim. And actually, we learned yesterday or 2 days ago that it's not so simple. There are certain pshute klietz that even midrabanan are not tamid. So it comes out, this is the words of the Rambam, the way it's good for us to learn how to memorize things. Hatome b'chlietz, tor b'klei matchis. Hatome b'klei matchis, tor b'klei eitz. Halacha of kol klei al-mulchama, all articles of war, like a sayif, like I would call the sword, and Danny the Gabe would right away correct me. It's not a sword, it's on the W. You should know just sword. By the way, letter Vav. A Vav is a W. At some point, we're going to start reading things correctly. I know about that, Danny. Not yet. We need. Maybe it's up to us. And a spear, and a helmet, right? The armor, right? Alter Rebbe's letter, the metal boots, the then is the Makabel Tuma, because there, it's amazing. Now, Adam Kegoin, Hakat law. You know why it's called the kat law? You know what katla means in Aramaic? To kill you. Because the necklaces, it's like when you go to a barber, sometimes there's not enough oxygen. I don't know what they do to my neck over there. They put the thing around you. it's called a necklace. It's called a killer. Or because it's very expensive when you buy your wife a necklace. It's a lot cheaper to buy a ring. I meant it in a good way. Buy your wife a necklace and rings. I'm sorry, earrings. And rings. So here's the word. We mentioned this in the last chapter. If it's a tachshit. Anything that's classified as a tachshit for Adam, tachshit Adam is mekabel tumah. That's the word Adam has to be underlined. Afilu dino shenifsal. Sometimes you have a coin, and the coin is whatever the face of the king is so rubbed out that no one will accept it as a coin, and you decided to make it as a necklace. Now it's a tachshit. It's not a functional money. It's tachshit. V'skina litloise betzavar ktano mekabel tumah.
My Cape Crown Heights told me that they use the red dimes or
They make it
as a necklace.
But that would not be betzavar katana. That would be betzavar gedolah. Betzavar katana mustame, it was like a cheap piece of jewelry. Oh, so what did we learn? What did we learn in the last chapter? That a kameya itself that's written on a piece of hide is not makabel tumah. But if it's a kameya written on metal, mistame, because it has an ornamental part to it. That's it. Mistame k'chol tachshitei adam. And some of it might be subject to time and place. If people consider leather a tachshit, could be. But let's go. If it's tachshit adam tame, halacha zayin. In contrast, kol tachshit yavehema, or tachshitei kelim, tachshitim for kelim. For example, hataboys that they make letzavan habehema, or laoznei hakelim. Now, bifnei yatzman. The Rambam is saying bifnei yatzman because we learned so many different about chibure kelim. Whenever it will be considered part of the keli, then it will become part of the keli. Or if it's a handle to a keli, in yodes, it by itself is nothing. Chutz mizuk shel behema. Now, I want to say something. A zuk shel behema, we're going to have a lot of halachas about it. Why do people put bells around the animal's neck? So the owner of the animal should easily find it. In Schweiz, all these cows with the bells because you want to know where they are. Oh, so that's called la'adam. No, if there's an adam purpose, that makes it into a keli. Or any v'kelim hamashmiya koil, if the purpose is li'adam, l'tzoyrech adam. Okay, so for example, now he wants to point out, people also put bells for tachshit. So, there's the bell and the klappen, however you call this in English. So the point will be is that if it's a bell that is a tachshit la'adam, even though it has no klapper, tachshit adam is makabel tam. If it's that around the animal's neck, even though people also put it for ornamental purposes, that will only become tamei when the klapper is in it because it has to have the tzorech adam. That will be over here. Okay, inbal. Now another thing, what do we say every day? What should we say every day by the korbanos? Shakoil yafal psamim. Hadek heitev hadek. So it's amazing that when they would have these little grinders for psamim, they would attach bells to it. So when you're knocking it, it should make noise. So or you put it on a crib before the electronic thing, a machaya. In other words, when the baby is moving around in the crib, there's bells to it. Do ahead. Now, why would they put bells on books? Some people say is that when the teacher would open up the book in the classroom, the kids outside recess, they would hear that it's time to come back in. Or imagine they would put it on diaper. Somehow when the diaper gets full, it would ring. All of these things, aside of its ornamental purpose, which we don't consider it, but it has to be servicing Adam. None of these bells without the inbal, without the klapid, are they're not called tachshitei yom. And even if you can argue it's called tachshitei kelim or tachshitei behema, it doesn't have any. It's not a kelim to become tamei. But if you made in boilim mekabel tumah, because all of the examples above, there is a purpose of people hearing and knowing what to do or what not to do. Beautiful. Afilu now, like we mentioned with the night. Once you have a keli, because you had on the book, you had the bell that when the teacher opens up the book, it's not just or making the book nicer, but it's also serving. Now, if the inbal falls out, mekabel and tuma, because the bell itself if you bring an external klapper, you can still use it. And that's the klal. Becoming a keli demands more. Once it's a keli, you need more for it to lose the din of a keli. When a bell is made for a person, like we mentioned before, you can't say he's not an adam. It's for the adult to know where the minor is. The moment that's made for a gadol, that already is called a tashit. It's amazing. When it came before to the coin, the Rambam writes clearly that it was a coin, but savar katan, savar ketana, that we don't say a minor. It's an ornament that's made for a 4-year-old girl is considered the ornament. This is not so pashut. So here we say it is a tashit, only if it's done for a gadol. Halacha 9, partsufis. Partsufis is a word, a Kabbalah word, a partsuf sholem. Here, partsufis means a mask. Where did we learn this down in Megillah? I'm trying to remember, not a Megillah. I'm trying to remember. We had a whole sugya about the masks. Maybe if you have in the bottom over there, the sugya. Bekabel istuma. Bechol hachoisamois. Seals. Not tabois with the choisim, Danny. Seals, just the seal. The din is, huh? Could be Shabbos. Understand? No, I want you to know that a seal is called a keli only if it is a metal seal. This is interesting. So people would use rings. Whenever you learned musnav, they used to have jalabas. They used to have like these ropes, like the Moroccans have now. When you would go on a trip, what you would do is that you would have rings, ropes, in which you would tie the robe into 2 leggings. So you bind it to you. It shouldn't be flowing when you're walking in the desert. And sometimes they would have rings. So it's something that's mishamish a beged. Or you somehow make it, if it's a garment that doesn't have sleeves, but it's very big, like the Indians wear. And you have these rings that make out of the fringes of your talus into sleeves. All of this is called tar. In other words, the pshat is, I know that I benefit when I'm walking to have proper sleeves or legs or holes to put my legs in. But it's called something that's being meshamash or beged. I'm benefiting indirectly. That's the pshat. Good. The tabas hasheir shel behemo. The ring that is served as the story with the Alter Rebbe, the pshat of Hashem is a collar. That's called direct human purpose, because why do you put a collar around the animal? Only for the person. It's like those bells. If you have a metal stick, why do you have a metal stick? Because you want to beat your animal with metal. It should move. That's called tashmish adam. Here we go. Final topic of today. This is big. So now that we established, like we spoke before about the needle, right? Does it have a place, a base kibble to put the thread? And if it doesn't, and you made it to remove a splinter, it's a bona fide keli. Who is determining that? When you're going from not keli to keli, machshav is enough. When you're going from a keli to make it ois keli, which is now it's no longer tamei, you have to have a maisem. So that's the rule. Halachiyut. Kol hakelim yardim letuma only b'machshava. And the musar that how important machshava is, and it's the highest levush. And let's speak in the positive, that when a person uses their machshava for good things, the mamish matayr the nefesh. It's machshava, but the ein oil they tumel b'shino mais. Like if a person had machshava zaris, shuva means do something good. But anyways, that's a nice vertile. Halavai, there's some truth to it. Let's go back to halach. And the Rambam gives examples. Now, maise has a lot of power. Hamaise mevatel miyad hamaise and miyad machshava. The hamachshava ein mevateles lo miyad hamaise. Not even miyad machshava. Wow, machshava cannot even about machshava, which means Rambam's going to apply everything. Kegoin tabas behema, ring that's used for an animal. That we said before is not considered a keli. Or kelim shechishav aleim lachzir tabas adam. No, it's a ring for a behemoth. A ring for a keli is not tummy. You decide to use it for men. It was not a keli. Your machshava can be yoided. We say yoided because you're making it susceptible to tumah. Only though it was just a machshava. But now that you had that machshava, then you know what the word is? I didn't even use it yet, La'adam. I was machshav, I'm going to use it for me. Now I have a new thought. Once machshava made it susceptible to tuma, even though it only became that way because of a machshava, ein machshava mitziyah midei machshava. That you never used it, la'adam, you can argue you didn't even follow through b'maisa your machshava. Once it's classified as a tachshid adam, tabas adam bumba, harei mekabelas tuma, she'ein machshava mevatelas midei machshava. You have to do a maisa beguf, kigoin sheyoshev isa, or yisakna b'maisa shel behema. Then, once you did a maisa which says this is for an animal, now you change the designation. Right. Tabas la'adam, tabas la'adam. What tabas la'adam means? Makabel tuma. The chish of the behema. Adayin mekabelas tuma kshoisa. She'ein hakelim oilam idei tumasam b'machshava. Oh, so behem maisa v'shina la behema. Because the Maisa not only is Maisa Mavatel Machshava, Maisa is even Mavatel Maisa. And as the Rebbe says, how Maisa who are Iker, Halach Yudal of Chedesh Reit V'Kotan. Now we get a great application. That was something that we keep on learning. Ein Lahem Machshava Yesh La Maisa. For this, Yesh La Maisa Ve'La Machshava. K'ma Shevan L'Mayla B'Yin Asher Oichlin. Halach Yud Beis Zug Shel Deles. A bell that's used on the door. And guys, a bell on the door is not called, it's called a bell for a kelim, not makabel tuma. We learned that bells on animals, mitaklaper with an in-bowl, since it's l'tzoyrach adam to know where the animal it is. So here we go. Another example. So it was not makabel tuma. Your machshava only is makes mekabel tuma means it doesn't become tuma. It now is susceptible to becoming tuma. But the shel behema, it was only designated. And now you want to sha'asa dadeles afilu chibra bekarka afilu kavah b'masmer. Now, what did we learn before? A maisa helps. The Rambam is repeating this not to give another example. He's adding a big din. The maisa that's needed is beguf hakeli. Here, when you just connected it to the door, that's not called a maisa. Even if you put it with a nail, mekabel to mekishoya, achi yeshana boy, maisa begufoy. Halacha yugim. Uman, you have the great craftsman. Shoyse maniach zugin ladalasas labehema. He's making bells for both. How do you determine that? He didn't have a specific machshava. He has a machine. It's knocking out the same thing is on a door, the same thing on a behema. Im roit for osel ladavish mekabel tuma. In both directions. We're all lenient following Roiv. Based on the halacha and Yud Gimel. No, the Rambam is going with the preface that Roiv, Zugin, Bechlau, they were made lebehema. And since there's a tzorech adam, as we said, it's mekabel tuma. Chutz, that which is found in large cities, there it's it makes sense because cities, even though most of them are used for animals, who has animals? We never even halavai we see an animal. Not dogs. Dogs is a whole different category here in LA. I'm talking about the cows. Final halacha from Perek Ches from today. Omar lu'uman. A person tells a craftsman, make for me 2 zugin, and one ladeles, which is not makabel tuma, and one for now there's no roiv. It's get it? Or aseli shtei machzelois, make for me 2 mats, one for laying on makabel tuma, and one to be mahil. That's the whole mat for schach. If it's made oil, which is good, it's not makabel tuma. Or he tells the craftsman, make for me 2 sheets, 2 sadinim, one litsurois. It's made, you're going to use it to make samples on it, to paint on it. It doesn't have a toiras beged. And one to use as an oil. Here, a sadin for an oil or a sadin for a curtain is makabel tuma. Now you have 2. Here we're machmer. We say they are both makabel tuma. And the worst thing is that since your machshava made both of them, you do that. Now, just when you get it and you say, okay, I'm going to use this for my delis, a machshava, machshava. Now you have to do a maisa, the goof of the object. Beautiful. To be